I only had you to save your sister. Those were the exact words Sabrina heard when she was 9, words spoken by her mother. With cold precision, no hesitation. Imagine being told that your very existence was just a biological backup plan, not a child, not a daughter, just a vial of matching DNA. From the moment she could walk, Sabrina's blood, her marrow, her body were all harvested to keep her older sister alive. No birthday parties, no baby pictures, just surgeries, just sacrifice. She wasn't born for love. She was born to serve. And once her purpose was fulfilled, they erased her like a bad memory. If that line made your heart drop, wait till you hear what she did next. Like, comment, subscribe, and tell me, what would you do? If your family used you like spare parts, Sabrina Dawson was the second daughter of a picture-perfect family, at least on the outside. Her sister Celeste was the golden child, smart, beautiful, and born with a rare genetic disorder that threatened her life by age 5. Faced with no donors, her parents made a decision that would define Sabrina's fate forever. They had another child not out of hope, but out of necessity. Sabrina wasn't wanted. She was engineered. She matched every biological marker Celeste needed. From infancy, Sabrina underwent a series of painful medical extractions: cord blood, bone marrow, stem cells. She never got to say no, never even knew she could. As Celeste recovered and thrived, Sabrina became a ghost in her own home. She wasn't included in family photos. She wasn't introduced to guests. She was the secret the Dawsons kept in the basement, literally and figuratively. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially when the forgotten child starts asking questions. And Sabrina, she was done being silent. Sabrina remembered the first time they took her blood. She was 4. She had come home from preschool with a drawing. She was proud of 2 stick figures holding hands under a big yellow sun. She'd drawn herself and her sister. In her young heart, she believed they were equals, loved equally, needed equally. But that afternoon, her mother knelt beside her with a cold smile. "We need to go to the hospital again, sweetheart. Your sister's sick. You remember what to do, right? No explanations, no choices. Just a gentle pat on the head and a juice box afterward, as if that made up for the fear and the needle in her tiny arm." From then on, Sabrina learned the rhythm of sacrifice. Every few months brought another extraction, marrow blood, even skin grafts. When Celeste developed an infection, she wasn't a child. She was a parts donor in a pink jacket. School was never a place of refuge either. Celeste was the star of everything. Even when she was sick, she was somehow adored. Teachers knew her name. Church leaders prayed for her publicly. And Sabrina, she was the other one. A shadow. Even her birthday was a shared date, because their mother had scheduled her C-section on Celeste's birthday. So we wouldn't have to throw 2 parties, her mother once said, laughing over a glass of wine. 1 birthday cake. 2 names. But only one got a wish. The resentment didn't come suddenly. It was a slow, quiet burn. At 7, Sabrina stopped showing her drawings. At 9, she stopped speaking at dinner. By 11, she started asking, why me? One night, she crept into her parents' room while they were out and found a folder tucked behind old tax returns. Inside were documents she didn't understand, medical release forms, embryonic planning charts, and a doctor's letter that said donor sibling embryo successfully implanted. In one line, everything made sense. She hadn't been born out of love. She'd been designed. After that, Sabrina changed. She no longer asked to join family vacations. She stayed late at the library, disappeared into books about genetics law and medical ethics. The school counselor called her distant. Her mother called her moody. But no one ever called her traumatized. No one ever asked how it felt to be used, how it felt to wake up with bruises and bandages, while hearing you should be grateful you could help your sister, grateful she was a child, not a miracle cure. In high school, Sabrina found solace in computers. Coding made sense in a way people didn't. If-then statements, binary outcomes. No emotional blackmail, no guilt. Just logic. She built a private server to store her medical history, tracked every procedure, every test result. She started logging what her parents refused to acknowledge the toll it took on her physically and mentally. By 17, she had the digital equivalent of a legal minefield. And for the first time, she felt power. But her family didn't notice. Not even when she fainted after donating bone marrow again for her sister's final transplant. That was the deal, they said. One more, one last time. Then it would be over. Except it wasn't. Celeste recovered. Celebrations were thrown. Sabrina was not invited. Instead, she was asked by her own mother to sign a form that would remove her from any future claims to the family trust. Celeste needs more support, her mother said. You'll be fine. You're smart, independent. Sabrina didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared. And for the first time, her mother flinched under her gaze. What her family didn't realize was that Sabrina was already preparing to show the world the truth, preparing to expose the system that allowed children like her to be harvested and discarded. And when the time came, she didn't just walk away. She walked through the firewall of everything they had tried to hide. It started with a password. One evening, 2 months after Celeste's final transplant, and Sabrina's quiet removal from the family trust, Sabrina sat alone in her cramped apartment. She was 19, living off campus, and working 2 part-time jobs to afford rent. No help, no visits. Her parents acted as if she'd moved to another country instead of across town. But that night everything changed. Sabrina had long suspected that there were records, hidden medical documents that her parents never shared with her. On a whim, she tried an old password she remembered her father using when she was a kid. Celeste 1989. It worked. She accessed the private server of Dr. Malkin, the family's longtime geneticist. What she found shattered what little she had left of her childhood illusions. There were documents dating back to before her birth embryo screening logs, ethical waivers signed quietly emails, where her parents negotiated pricing for the procedure. It wasn't just a medical decision, it was a transaction. But what broke her the most wasn't the science. It was an email from her sister. Subject: She's asking questions again. From celestedawson@email.com. To Mom. Don't worry. I'll distract her. She's always been gullible. Just remind her how much she's helped me. That usually shuts her up. The timestamp was from just last year, after the last transplant. Sabrina sat frozen, reading the words over and over, her heart trying to reject them. She had always believed that at the very least, Celeste had bonded with her through their shared pain. that deep down maybe her sister saw her as more than a donor. But this, Celeste knew. She had always known, and she had never loved her. Fueled by grief and betrayal, Sabrina did something she had only fantasized about until now she went public. Using encrypted data leaks, she anonymously uploaded the entire archive of files, medical records, emails, photos of bruises, even the video footage of her final hospital stay to an underground whistleblower site focused on bioethics violations. Within 48 hours, the story had gone viral. Daughter used as organ source by wealthy family, then cut out of inheritance. The real-life spare child. How a teen exposed medical abuse. TV anchors didn't say her name yet, but the details were damning. A child used as a walking donor bank, family name redacted, confidentiality compromised, public outrage erupted. And then, someone did name her. Not a journalist, not her parents. Celeste. In a pathetic preemptive move to save face, Celeste published a carefully crafted blog post on her influencer account titled My Side of the Story. It was filled with victim theatrics. I was sick. I didn't know the full extent of what was done. My sister and I had a complicated relationship. I loved her in my own way. I'm hurt that she would go behind our family's back like this. The final line read, "We all did what we had to do to survive." The comments section turned into a war zone. Some supported her, many did not. But Sabrina didn't respond. Not yet. She was preparing something far bigger. She took everything public. With her name. She filed a civil lawsuit against her parents and the doctors involved. The charges unlawful use of a minor in medical procedures without informed consent, emotional abuse, and bioethical misconduct. Her lawyer, a woman who had lost her own sister to a similar case of forced organ donation, took the case pro bono. Suddenly, Sabrina's face was everywhere. Not as a villain, but as a survivor, an activist. And then came the twist no one expected. During deposition, the court ordered all parties to produce full financial disclosures and communication logs. That's when it was revealed Sabrina's parents had received financial compensation for every donation she gave. Each procedure had been billed to a private trust, one Sabrina never knew existed. A fund meant for her. A fund that had been emptied years ago, funneled quietly into offshore accounts. Her parents weren't just users. They were profiteers. But the final blow, it didn't come in a courtroom. It came at a hospital. Months into the lawsuit, Sabrina received a call from a nurse at St. Mercy Hospital. Celeste had collapsed. Liver failure, irony, poetic justice. Her body kept alive for so long, by another had begun to turn on itself. The hospital requested a familial donor, and of course her parents came begging. "You're still her best match," her mother whispered on live television, crocodile tears running down her face. "We're sorry. Please, help her one last time." Sabrina looked her dead in the eye and said, "Help her yourself." She didn't just refuse. She held a press conference and said, "I will not be the backup plan anymore. I'm not a spare part. I'm not their second chance. I'm a person. And I'm done bleeding for people who'd let me die if it were convenient." The internet exploded. Some called her cruel. Most called her heroic. But Sabrina didn't care about the noise. For the first time she was free. The court date was set. Sabrina walked into the courthouse alone, wearing the same navy blazer she had bought from a thrift store the week after she moved out. No entourage, no family. Just a USB drive tucked inside her pocket, containing every violation, every betrayal, every cold document that stripped her of humanity in the name of saving someone else. But she didn't expect what came next. The moment she entered the building, flashing cameras erupted. Reporters screamed questions, microphones shoved in her face. But not about her lawsuit. They were asking about the counter-lawsuit, filed quietly, overnight, by her parents. Allegation, defamation, amount $12 million. They claimed Sabrina had maliciously ruined their lives and reputations, that her false and exaggerated narrative had destroyed their privacy and subjected them to public hatred. She was being sued by the very people who turned her into a medical resource. In the courtroom, Sabrina sat across from them for the first time since she left home. Her mother wore a pearl necklace and a performative frown. Her father avoided eye contact. Celeste wasn't there. And maybe that was what hurt most. Even now at her worst, Celeste had stayed silent. Not even a text. Not even a word of acknowledgement. After everything. The lawyers spoke. The judge listened, and Sabrina held back the scream in her throat. But inside, something cracked. That night, alone in her apartment, she cried harder than she had in years. Not the quiet kind of crying she was used to. This was ugly, heaving, soul-breaking. All her life she told herself that maybe her parents didn't know better, that maybe her sister was scared too, that maybe somehow if she just showed enough pain or said the right words, they'd love her back. But the truth had been screaming in her face for years. They never saw her as real, and now they wanted to punish her for telling the truth. The internet turned brutal. Supporters stood by her, yes, but the opposing wave was fierce. She's just bitter. She's trying to cash in. Her sister's dying, and she's playing victim. Someone even stalked her address. One night she came home to find the words, "Selfish monster," spray-painted across her apartment door. And that was the night Sabrina broke. Not in the way they wanted. Not by giving in. But by deciding she would never let them write her story again. She disappeared for 2 weeks. No press. No interviews. No social media. Rumors flew. Some said she had fled the country. Others claimed she dropped the lawsuit. Her parents' legal team began celebrating early, calling it a sign of guilt. But Sabrina was planning something else. In those 2 weeks, she rebuilt her archive this time, not just with her medical records, but with those of other children. She began contacting whistleblowers, survivors of forced organ donations, children of surrogacy who were sold under-the-table teens, used in savior-sibling programs across multiple countries. And one by one, the stories came pouring in. She created a short documentary. Title, "I Wasn't Born to Be Loved." She narrated it herself. No filters, no makeup, just her face, her voice, and the truth. It premiered online at 9:00 p.m. on a Tuesday. By midnight, it had 1.4 million views. But the price of truth kept rising. 3 days later, she was served again. This time by the hospital that had carried out most of her procedures. They claimed misuse of confidential medical data and breach of non-disclosure agreements her parents signed on her behalf. Sabrina couldn't believe it. She was being sued, for sharing what had been done to her own body. The legal pressure was unbearable. Her lawyer warned her, "They want to bury you, not win, just exhaust you until you shut up." And for a moment, Sabrina nearly did. She considered pulling the video, settling, quietly leaving it all behind. She could move to another country, change her name, start over. But then she got an email from a girl in Poland, 17 years old. "They're trying to make me donate part of my liver to my brother. I showed your video to my school counselor. She helped me call the authorities. You saved me." And that was it. The moment. Sabrina realized they could sue her, ruin her credit, call her names. But they couldn't stop the fire she had lit, and she wasn't going anywhere. In court, she stood again, this time taller, not because she had fewer enemies, she had more, but because she had found her reason. She looked at her mother and said, "You may have brought me into this world to save someone else, but now I'm here to save myself, and every child like me." She turned to the judge. "And I will not stop until this entire system burns." After months of court hearings, hate mail threats and headlines, Sabrina did something that shocked everyone. She went silent, not out of fear, not from exhaustion, but because she needed to breathe. She withdrew from interviews, let the lawyers handle the noise, shut off her notifications, and walked away from the storm she had created, not to abandon it, but to finally listen to herself. For the first time, she wasn't fighting to be heard. She was learning to hear herself. She rented a cabin outside Denver. No Wi-Fi, no reporters. Just trees, silence, and a battered notebook filled with questions she had never dared to ask. If I wasn't born to save her, who am I? What does healing even look like when you were never allowed to hurt out loud? What if I don't want revenge? But I can't forgive either. The answers didn't come fast. Some didn't come at all. But something else did. Stillness. She woke up early, made her own meals, walked barefoot through cold grass in the mornings. And slowly, the screaming inside her chest quieted. Grief began to loosen its grip, not vanish, but shift. Not just pain anymore. Purpose. One night as snow fell softly outside the windows, Sabrina got a surprise visit from someone she hadn't spoken to since the lawsuit began, Nia. Her college roommate. Nia had once been the only person who treated Sabrina like she wasn't broken or dangerous or the weird girl who doesn't talk about her family. She had simply said, "You don't owe anyone your story, but if you ever want to tell it, I'm here." That night, Nia brought wine, warmth, and something Sabrina hadn't felt in months. Safety. They sat in front of the fire, and Nia said gently, "You know, Sab, you don't have to be the face of the war forever. You already cracked the wall. Let others keep swinging. You can build something now." Sabrina didn't answer right away. But deep inside, a seed had been planted. Later that week, she opened her laptop. Not to post, not to fight, not to leak anything. She opened a blank document and simply titled it The Sabrina Foundation. Not a vanity project, not revenge, but a home for every child like her used, discarded, and forgotten. She started drafting plans for legal aid, mental health support, a hotline translation services survivor scholarships. And it felt right. Not loud, not viral, not attention-seeking. just right. But she still had one more decision to make. The court case was heading into its final phase. Her parents' legal team offered a settlement, drop all charges, sign an NDA, and walk away with a lump sum and silence. It was tempting. Freedom. Money. Escape. Nia looked at her across the coffee table and said, "Is that what you really want?" Sabrina shook her head slowly. "I want them to know that I exist, that I always did. Not as a donor, not as a mistake, not as a secret. I want my name in the verdict, even if it breaks everything." She rejected the offer, and the next day walked back into the courtroom, clear-eyed, composed unapologetically, herself. No shame, no trembling. She stood tall as the judge addressed her by name. "Miss Sabrina Dawson." Her name echoed in the silence like a declaration of survival. They didn't win. Not everything. But enough. The judge ruled that medical decisions involving minors must include age-appropriate consent whenever possible. Sabrina's testimony became a reference point in a legal review for donor-sibling exploitation. The defamation countersuit. Dismissed. And her parents. Their reputation crumbled. Quietly. Permanently. That night, as she stood outside the courthouse in the cold, reporters shouting and lights flashing around her, Sabrina whispered something to herself. I wasn't born to save anyone, but I lived to save myself. The Sabrina Foundation launched exactly 1 year after the lawsuit ended. Not with a press conference, not with celebrity endorsements, just a black and white video. Sabrina seated against a blank backdrop, looking straight into the camera. I wasn't supposed to have a voice. I wasn't supposed to outlive my usefulness. But I did. And now I speak for every child who was treated like a product instead of a person. Within 48 hours, the Foundation's website crashed from traffic. Survivors wrote in from 36 countries. Medical professionals offered pro bono help. Legal teams from major universities requested partnerships. Parents who once turned a blind eye asked shamefully how to make amends. And as for the Dawsons, their world collapsed. Sabrina's parents were quietly blacklisted from 2 medical boards. Dr. Malkins lost his license after an internal ethics review exposed multiple undocumented procedures. The hospital involved in Sabrina's early surgeries was forced to issue a public apology and pay a class action settlement, not just to her, but to 4 other families whose backup children had never spoken out until now, and Celeste. In a bitter twist of karma, no donor came forward. She lived, but not in the spotlight. She disappeared, just like she tried to make Sabrina do. But Sabrina didn't disappear. She stood on stages, spoke before parliaments, built a global coalition for child donor rights, not to punish, to protect. And as the world watched her become everything they once said she'd never be, one truth echoed loud and clear. She was never the mistake. They were. Today, Sabrina Dawson lives far from the courthouse, the headlines and the hospital rooms that once defined her. She lives by the ocean now, in a small home with no secrets. Every morning she walks barefoot through the surf, no wires in her arms, no labels on her skin, no one waiting to take something from her. She's not a donor. She's not a project. She's not the backup child. She's a woman who reclaimed her name, her body, and her worth. For years her existence was reduced to a function, something to be used, hidden, erased. But Sabrina learned the most powerful truth of all. You are not what others do to you. You are what you choose to become, despite them. And in choosing herself, she taught the world that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's sacred. That surviving is not weakness. It's revolution. So if you've ever been treated like you're disposable, invisible, or only valuable when you're useful, let this story be your spark. You are not spare. You are enough. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe. Or tell us your own. Someone out there needs to hear it.